These are crushing losses for families across the country and all the way to Russia. And all of us want to know how this could have happened. 67 Americans dead and others born in other countries, but it's one of the busiest airports in the country. I fly out of it all the time. Everyone around here does. And it's just a few miles from the White House and the Capitol. So again, is it really necessary for military aircraft to conduct nighttime practice runs so close to a busy commercial flight path? To the layperson, that seems, I don't know, really, I'm sorry, but it sounds stupid. And of course, the obvious questions like, why didn't the Black Hawk pilot heed the flight warning? But then the other question, did he even receive it? Or was it even transmitted to him? Or did it come on another channel? And then what was the staffing like in the tower? Were there enough eyes on the skies? But there is disturbing new information out tonight that may shed light on the situation. The New York Times was first to report that the staffing at Reagan during that time of night in the tower was, quote, not normal. An internal FAA report is revealing many unsettling facts, but perhaps this is the most disturbing. The controller who was handling helicopters in the airport's vicinity Wednesday night was also instructing planes that were landing and departing from its runways. Those jobs are typically assigned to 2 controllers rather than 1. So let that sink in for a minute. Should we assume that since the controller shortage exists coast to coast, all across the country there's controller shortages in the towers, that these controllers nationwide are now doing double duty under extreme pressure with thousands of lives on the line every day? More from the report. This increases the workload for the air traffic controller and can complicate the job. One reason is that the controllers can use different radio frequencies to communicate with pilots flying planes and pilots flying helicopters. While the controller is communicating with pilots of the helicopter and the jet, the 2 sets of pilots may not be able to hear one another. Okay, this is insane. The staffing in the tower at Reagan National last night was nearly a third below targeted staff levels, we read. Again, until they find and analyze all the black boxes, we won't know what caused this crash. But it's also worth remembering that along with the staffing problems are the upticks in the number of close calls on runways and near midair collisions. Just a few weeks ago, we had one. And this has spurred warnings from aviation experts that would only be a matter of time before tragedy struck.
We've got current and former air traffic controllers telling the New York Times that close calls were happening so frequently, they're really scared it's only a matter of time until a deadly crash occurs. We don't want to scare people out there. We just want to let them know that this is what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, clearly, this is a job where there is no room for error. And even if we have the best of the best in place, which we should, we can't expect them to handle double the workload. Now, the new Trump administration is committed to fixing this mess, which requires getting the FAA back to a singular focus, which is its primary mission, to keep our skies safe, not to keep the workplace diverse.
I went into a meeting and I was the most junior person there. And I looked around the table and it was full of women. And that's when I really realized this is an agency that can empower women and grow them and and have them become leaders.
Now, all that nonsense, the diversity, that has to go. It's just back to common sense. These air traffic controllers should be hired and paid extremely well. And the towers, they should be well staffed. Excellence all around.
One witness described it as a big ball of fire and wreckage just falling down towards the river. Here's what it sounded like in the tower.
Crash, crash, crash. This is alert 3. Crash, crash, crash. This is alert 3. Where's the alert 3? It is off the approaching the runway 33. Approaching the runway 33. Helicopter crash.
This is the deadliest air disaster in America since 9/11. No one's blaming the American Airlines pilots. Planes can't get out of the way as easy as choppers. The Black Hawk pilots were pretty experienced. The male pilot had 1,000 hours under his belt. The female pilot had 500. So what happened? Tonight, we're learning that the air traffic control tower at Reagan National was understaffed. The New York Times breaking the story that one controller was doing the job of two. The controller, who is handling helicopters, was also instructing planes that were landing and departing from its runways. That's not normal. That means you're using two frequencies, and the plane pilots can't hear the helicopter pilots. Reagan National has had staffing shortages for a while. They're supposed to have 30 air traffic controllers in the tower. They only had 19. This is the busiest runway in America, and they're down 11 guys. In fact, the Washington Post is reporting that just Tuesday, another jet trying to land aborted and had to make a second approach after a helicopter appeared on its flight path. The president briefed the nation this morning and said DEI could be a factor.
I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened because of the stress, where you have many, many planes coming into one target, and you need a very special talent and a very special genius to be able to do it. Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good lineup.
Anytime you mention DEI, the press goes crazy because that's their baby.
You don't even yet know the names of the 67 people who were killed, and you are blaming Democrats and DEI policies and air traffic control. Don't you think you're getting ahead of the investigation right now?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think with the names of the people, you mean the names of the people that are on the plane, you think that's going to make a difference?
Does it comfort their families
They
to
are
hear you
a
blaming
group of
DEI
people that have
policies?
lost their lives. If you want a list of the names, we can give you that. We'll be giving that very soon. We're in coordination with American Airlines. We're in coordination very strongly, obviously, with the military. But I think that's not a very smart question.
But are you
I'm
blaming-
surprised coming from you.
And the DEI defenders didn't stop.
I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this. This is a major chess game at the highest level. When you have 60 planes coming in during a short period of time, and they're all coming in different directions, and you're dealing with very high-level computer work and very complex computers. And one of the other things I will tell you is that the systems that were built, I was going to rebuild the entire system, and then we had an election that didn't turn out the way it should have.
Now, we don't know what factor DEI played here. Could have been a mechanical issue, could have been medical. They've just recovered one of the black boxes, and this investigation is going to tell us the truth. But when DEI is in place, which it was at the FAA, standards get lowered, staffing's affected. And when there's a disaster like this, it makes everyone naturally suspicious. Late in the Obama-Biden administration, 1,000 well-qualified air traffic control applicants were rejected for not being diverse enough. That caused staffing shortages. And the Biden administration was sued for discriminating against qualified white applicants. The COVID shutdowns didn't help staffing either. They stopped training controllers for 2 years. How are air traffic controllers not essential workers? I have no idea. And this DEI thing isn't just a race thing. Biden instituted DEI quotas at the FAA in order to recruit workers who were deaf, vision impaired, missing limbs, completely paralyzed, epileptic, people who were severely intellectually disabled, psychiatrically disabled, and dwarfs. This was Biden's FAA just 2 years ago.
We need a diverse group of air traffic controllers to bring distinct perspectives to handle the ever-changing aerospace landscape. I'm calling on students and alumni from HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, and tribal colleges to apply now to become air traffic controllers.
Primetime also found this little slideshow from the Biden FAA titled Rethinking Diversity. And it says, quote, diversity plus inclusion equals better performance. Is that true? A major problem was that the FAA couldn't even fill their own DEI quotas. According to lawsuits, they discriminated against qualified candidates to hire diverse candidates, but they weren't able to hire enough diverse candidates. Air traffic control towers are short-staffed across the country. The agency has 1,000 fewer certified controllers today than it did a decade ago. Only 1% of air traffic facilities met their staffing targets last year. 1%. Why is the FAA the only agency in the federal government short-staffed? Every other agency has the opposite problem. They have too much personnel. Only at the FAA, they can't find enough people. Is that because you can't work remotely to be an air traffic controller? And it's not about money. Biden and Trump spent the exact same amount on the FAA. This is about mismanagement. And that's the president's point.
Are you saying race or gender played a role in this tragedy?
It may have. I don't know. Incompetence might have played a role. We'll let you know that. But we want the most competent people. We don't care what race they are. We want the most competent people, especially in those positions. And you're talking about extremely complex things. And if they don't have a great brain, a great power of the brain, they're not going to be very good at what they do, and bad things will happen.
This is about competence, and it starts at the top. In less than 24 hours, the president came out, held an open-ended press conference with his secretaries of transportation and defense and his VP, and then took questions in the Oval and signed a presidential memo to get to the bottom of things. As a reminder, this is who Joe Biden nominated to run the FAA.
What airspace requires an ADS-B transponder? Quickly, please.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Not sure I can answer that question right now.
So what are the 6 types of special use airspace that protect this national security that appear on FAA charts? Quickly, please.
Sorry, Senator, I cannot answer that question.
So what are the operational limitations of a pilot flying under basic med?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I'm not a pilot, so.
Can you tell me what the minimum separation distance is for landing and departing airliners during the daytime, Mr. Washington?
I don't want to guess on that.
Do you know the difference between those two, Part 44809 and Part 107? Do you know the difference there?
No, I cannot.
That guy had to withdraw his nomination because he was so unqualified. We've had mechanical issues with Boeing jets. Tulsi Gabbard was put on a TSA watch list. We've had near misses over and over again. These things should never happen in the United States of America. And a crash like this should never happen again. Our hearts and prayers go out to the families of these victims. We are so sorry for your loss. This is just such a senseless tragedy. What a sad day for this country.
Some difficult news from D.C., our nation's capital. There are no survivors from last night's horrific mid-air collision between an Army Black Hawk helicopter and that regional passenger jet near Reagan National Airport. All told, 67 people lost their lives, including 64 passengers and crew on American Airlines Flight 5342. All 3 soldiers aboard the Black Hawk helicopter are lost. Tonight, we are praying for the victims. We're praying for their families. There are no words that can truly encapsulate the scale of this tragedy. And now Americans are searching for answers, as they should. How could a Black Hawk Army helicopter crash into a passenger jet that was landing at Reagan National? At this hour, I wish I had all the answers. I don't. I can't tell you exactly how or why this happened. But we are gleaning information that is quite alarming. According to a report, John Solomon, justthenews.com, last night's midair collision was preceded by months and years now of near misses and safety warnings. Look at this. In 2023, there were 19 near misses at airports all across the country. That is one of the largest totals in many years. In 2024, more of the same, including at Reagan National Airport, where multiple collisions were narrowly avoided. Look at this headline from May of 2024. Quote, federal officials are investigating another close call between planes at Reagan National Airport. And as John Solomon is pointing out, An expert report sent to the FAA under Biden warned directly, quote, America's air traffic control system is suffering from quality control issues and staffing shortages that put safety at risk. They were warned repeatedly, and it gets worse. The New York Times tonight reporting, quote, control tower staffing at Reagan National Airport was not normal during last night's deadly crash. And according to CBS News, quote, one air traffic control worker was managing the helicopters and the planes, a job normally done by 2 people. In December, the CEO of United Airlines warned that an ongoing air traffic controller shortage is now a major problem, but the last administration, they had other priorities. You know, pothole Mayor Pete, Biden's transportation secretary, preoccupied. You might remember, you know, launched that billion-dollar pilot project to build, you know, equity in America's roads and bridges and focused on climate change and DEI programs. It is no secret that across the entire Biden administration, DEI was prioritized over merit. But it didn't start with Biden. Under Obama, the FAA launched a national outreach program for diversity and inclusion. This included a push to hire workers with severe intellectual disabilities and psychiatric problems. That makes no sense. A 2024 lawsuit also alleged that the FAA turned away nearly 1,000 air traffic control applicants solely based on their race. As reported by the Washington Times, a 2013 FAA document raised the issue in stark terms, asking how much of a change in job performance is acceptable to achieve diversity goals. It turns out that for years, Democrats were playing woke politics with our lives. Apparently, the FAA included these insane DEI directives on their website until just a few days ago, when Donald Trump signed that executive order banning DEI across government agencies. Now we don't know how last night's crash occurred. We're being very clear about that. But one thing is clear. Sirens have been blaring the last number of years. And under Biden and Pothole Pete and Kamala Harris, every warning sign was clearly ignored. In all areas of government, meritocracy must return throughout the land in every regard.
I know. You never thought this could happen to you, but here I am. Yeah, Danish scientists have discovered a patch of 66-million-year-old vomit that's being hailed as a national treasure. Well, that beats us. In America, all we had was an 81-year-old piece of crap in the White House. Ooh. The View shared a clip of border czar Tom Homan warning, quote, if you're in the country illegally, you're on the table, causing Joy Behar to immediately ask for a napkin and some silverware. She's a cannibal. Also on The View, Sarah Haynes says that her co-hosts are out of touch with Americans because none voted for Trump. But they're also out of touch because no one will touch them. Lay's just issued a recall on some of their potato chips that, if consumed, could result in death. Well, that's a risk I'm willing to take, said one man. Chris Christie is so happy that this guy's back. RFK's cousin, Caroline Kennedy, attacked him as being unqualified to become HHS secretary. Sheesh. The way she's reacting, you'd think her uncle drowned his secretary. It makes you think, though, right? Donald Trump says he's using his emergency powers to increase water flow to California. And water is so plentiful in LA now, they actually had to move Tom Cruise to higher ground. LA Mayor Karen Bass says Pacific Palisades will be rebuilt by an outside consultant. I think we have a picture. CNN's Brian Stelter reviewed Caroline Leavitt's first White House press briefing and called it theater. And he knows theater. In the musical Oklahoma, he played Oklahoma. President Trump ordered a freeze on federal grants and loans. Meanwhile, we're still trying to figure out who ordered the freeze on Mitch McConnell. It's funny. And finally, a new study says that dads could get postpartum depression, too. Not if you nail the nanny, said one man. Hey. It's not bad. Okay, let's do this. Settle down, kids. So why is it that the source of many of our country's problems can be traced to innocuous phrases? Like when a doctor says it's a simple procedure and 2 minutes later he's got his fist up my butt. It's how liberals work. They give things titles and names that sound so benign. Things like gender-affirming care, undocumented immigrants, or pregnant people. But add to that NGOs. It stands for non-governmental organization. Something non-government? How could that be bad? True, it sounds safe, even boring. I hear non-governmental organization and I'm like, see you later. I'm off to one of my slaughterhouses to butcher an unprofitable racehorse. Wow.
That one landed.
This is a tough crowd. Not laughing about butchered horses. See, I actually thought NGOs were charities, like the ones I support for homeless runway models.
What's it called?
I don't know. But NGOs are not charities, far from it. Many powerful NGOs have fueled America's illegal crisis by subverting the laws, by actively transporting migrants into the country, moving them from one city to the next to avoid detection, and basically throwing your money around like Hunter in the champagne room at the Rub and Tug Lounge. They provide transportation to get illegals to our border with shelter and services along the way, and legal services to circumvent our immigration laws once they arrive. Now, you must have wondered as you watched the migrants streaming across the border, how did they even get to that point? Who was aiding and supplying them? Those migrants, they didn't appear hungry or desperate. They were mostly well-fed dudes in decent clothes with backpacks and cell phones. They were better off than my writers. True, one of them has scurvy. But, you know, I tell him he's got a pirate's tan. So who was behind this? Well, as it turns out, you and I are, without our knowledge. Yeah, you assumed NGOs didn't have their fingers in your wallet, when in reality, they're pickpocketing you like an illegal on the A train. And they profit from doing things that were considered illegal for Uncle Sam to do himself. And they receive a bulk of their funding from us. But under Trump, as always, we learn about the stuff that's been made deliberately complicated so we don't learn about it. Last week, he signed an executive order suspending refugee admissions into the U.S. And soon after that, the State Department issued a freeze on foreign aid. And that freeze included a stop work order to their NGO partner refugee groups, effectively halting their funding. And perhaps the biggest scam since I sold all that counterfeit Propecia to Jesse. Yeah. But now these groups are furious because for years under Biden's State Department, they've been using your money to help the migrant train from South America to your town. Now, I don't blame them for being pissed. Human trafficking just got a lot less profitable. But it's crazy. We go to work and the government uses our taxes to help criminals break our laws. And when Trump decides to solve the problem, out comes Hitler.
The fear and the panic and the division is, I think, something that we should all be concerned about.
When you start having Gestapo raids in America.
If that sounds vaguely familiar, that's because it is. Similarities to what happened in Germany.
You know what else is similar to what happened in Germany? Everything. Everything you can compare. Except I don't remember people sneaking into Nazi Germany, then pushing people off subway platforms and getting free hotels. But then again, I slept through college. Speaking of violent crime, watch what Stephen Miller does to Jake Tapper.
The Department of Agriculture says that between 2020 and 2022, 42% of crop workers were undocumented immigrants. And in many cases, as you know, these migrants do jobs many Americans do not want to do.
I'm sure it's not your position, Jake. You're just asking the question. that we should supply America's food with exploitative illegal alien labor. I obviously don't think that's what you're implying. Only 1% of alien workers in the entire country work in agriculture. The illegal aliens that Joe Biden brought into our country are not full stop doing farm work. They are not. The illegal aliens he brought in from Venezuela, from Haiti, from Nicaragua, they are not doing farm work. They're in our cities collecting welfare.
Nice. And so Tapper believes illegals do what Americans don't want to do. But sorry, Jake, even they won't watch CNN. But as always, you also have the grandstanding political hacks going against what America wants. Here's Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry.
I want to speak directly to people who are undocumented. We love you. We will stand up for you. And we will do anything in our power to help. Because you're not an alien in our city, you're a neighbor. Our police officers will not be cooperating with federal law enforcement around federal immigration law. We enforce state and local laws here. As for cooperation with ICE, the answer is no.
Man, we have to stop electing theater kids to government. That guy should be hosting Blue's Clues. So now, whether this funding freeze works or not, at least America is finally seeing the grift at work. Trump does it again. He pulls that curtain back, and now you start to understand how we got to this place. And it's so ugly, you'd think you're watching The View. Let's welcome tonight's guest, our this audience. His act puts more people to sleep than Bill Cosby. Actor, writer, comedian Jamie Lissow. He once checked my prostate over Zoom. Host of Ask Dr. Drew on Rumble, Dr. Drew Pinsky. At the gym, she does Atlas Shrugs. New York Times bestselling author and Fox News contributor, and he went from cracking skulls to splitting sides. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NWA world champion. Jamie, good to see you wore a T-shirt tonight.
Good to see you.
Didn't expect to see it, but I'm glad you wore it. Did you know what an NGO was before tonight? I thought it was like something like the Peace Corps.
I'm familiar with it from the middle of the bingo song.
Yeah. Nice.
What I did not know what it was, and then I watched that. I still kind of don't. How about the Trump is doing what he said he was going to do, which I like to see, right? Like he's doing what he said he was going to do, and I think that's commendable. You don't see that from politicians ever. I never saw that from my ex-wife. I remember this one time she goes, "Till death do us part." And but it is a confusing, it's I get that it's a touchy subject. I don't know if you know this about me, but I actually dated an illegal immigrant for as she was my girlfriend. And every time we would do something intimate in bed, I was like, again, she's doing jobs American women don't want to do.
Terrible, Dr. Drew. You and I both, our eyes met almost romantically when Jacob Fry said he wouldn't cooperate.
Yeah, to me, it seemed like, isn't that breaking federal law? And is he going to end up in jail? Fine, he doesn't want his local officers participating, but he is defying federal law, which is the law of the land.
Also, it's the people want it. The people voted for this, you douchebag, not you.
This is the part that drives me crazy. And I don't get it. How does the press still not understand the difference between somebody who's here illegally, undocumented illegally, and somebody who went through the process? I'm from an immigrant family. It took forever, and they were escaping desperate circumstances, and still you had to pay.
Were they from Chicago?
They ended up in Chicago, interestingly enough, and so from bad to worse. But But the point is that what do they think? That when they say America's built on immigrants, yeah, who went through this incredible procedure, had to prove what they had to offer the country, how they were going to make money, what they were going to do when they got here, and then live up to that.
I think it's insulting the way they use the word asylum and all these asylum laws and rules, and how they're just, people get asylum, and then they go back and they visit the place they're claiming asylum from. That doesn't work. No one was going back to Nazi Germany to check on their plants.
No.
Cat. Were you following this NGO phenomenon? I was worried about doing this story because I was like going, do people know enough to care? But then you find out, like, we used to watch this and go like, how did all these people get here? They didn't walk 1,000 miles. Now we know.
The story is very confusing. I mean, it's convoluted, and I also know that my brain's not operating at its highest capacity in my current state, so it could be that. But one thing that I had the biggest, and it's not just immigration stuff, it's a few different kind of NGOs, foreign aid, all these different things. And I'm just really confused. Maybe you guys can help, because they're called NGOs, which stand for non-governmental organizations.
Yeah.
So why are they called that if now when they're saying that Trump briefly freezing funding they're not gonna make it?
Yes,
like,
exactly.
How do they get to be called that if even a freeze in government funding means like, well, we're gonna have to shut our doors? What have you done? Why are you called that then?
Yes, because
am I missing something, or does that not make sense?
NGO is a fancy way of saying leech. They're just, they attach to the government and they just suck the blood. But it's our blood, Kat.
But it's almost like the person who's like, well, I wasn't doing exactly what they were doing.
It reminds me how they got around gain of function.
Yes.
Have somebody else do it. We'll call it Wuhan. We'll call it Peter Daszak's lab in North Carolina. We'll call it an NGO.
Yeah, I don't know, Tyrus. Are you familiar with this whole phenomenon?
Yeah, but where I'm coming from was called a front.
Yeah.
I mean, you call it an NGO. You have a very successful bodega that never has food in it, and routine stops every 3 or 4 weeks by certain guys with a Colombian accent. Chances are it might be a front. This is a front, and they can put anyone they want in that position. This is how the little Bidens reward. This is how you get your information. You pay that $10,000 dinner or whatever it was, or give him his little diamond ring in China, and then your buddies get a us over, even though it doesn't sound like that, but that's exactly what it is. And you get a little program where you go out and help young military-age men find their way and their place by placing them on buses at midnight and rushing, and then dropping them off just in time for the cameras at CNN to go, oh, they've walked 10,000 miles to be here.
Yes.
In white shoes.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone's got a good meal, and they're on the phone like, yeah, I just got here. Where you're at, the English is better than ours. Yeah. So it's just a front. And what it is he's coming in this situation. He doesn't have to run for re-election. He doesn't need the money. They have no influence on him, so he's starting to hit him at the roots. And you're going to see the dirtiest, most corrupt politicians fight this ferociously. And they're saying the Hitler stuff, but it's not working because you've said Hitler so much that it doesn't mean anything anymore, which is a shame because that's a word you should always be worried about.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.